Hello and welcome back. In this episode I'll be going back to the sci-fi range and we'll be using these textures here to make some kind of shield or power generator. And as usual you can find a link to the PDF file for these down in the description. So let's make a start. Okay then, the first thing we'll need to do is glue a couple of these textures to some corrugated cardboard, and when they're dry we can cut them to size with a sharp knife, and as I say, we'll need to make a couple of those. Next we'll glue this texture to some regular cardboard, but before we cut it out we'll need to score it along all of these lines here, so that when we do cut it to size we can bend it into this kind of shape, to match the profile of the pieces that we just made. Then we'll just need to glue all of these pieces together. And the way I like to do this is to first apply some hot glue to the top two edges of one of the side panels, and then try to align the central fold of the cardboard piece over the top of that, if that makes sense. Then I'll do the same thing with the second side panel, like you can see here, and once that's done, I'll start gluing the rest together, concentrating on one slope at a time. So that's all of the one side done, and I'll now move on to the other side. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward process. And when we're done, this is the kind of thing that we're aiming for. So yeah, something like that. Okay, next we're going to do a similar thing and glue this smaller texture to some more corrugated card, and once again cut that to size. Then we'll glue this texture to some regular cardboard and score it along all of these lines, just like we did with the larger piece, so that we basically end up with similar, but smaller pieces to the piece that we just made. However, this time there's only one side panel to glue into place, which is what you can see me doing here. So yeah, it's pretty much the same procedure, just on a smaller scale. And with any luck, that should result in this kind of thing. Right then, so once that's done, we can apply some hot glue to the inside of this smaller piece, and stick that to the side of the larger piece, making sure that it sits flush with the bottom. So, there you go, something like that. Okay, for this next part, we'll need to glue these pieces to some thin foam core, and also some of the matching plain texture to the back, so that when we cut them out, we end up with pieces that have the same texture on either side. Then we'll cut a small strip of the plain texture that's the same width as the foam core itself, and using a regular glue stick we'll glue that around the edge, just to cover the exposed foam. And that should end up looking something like this, and we will need to do that for all 6 pieces, so here's some that I made earlier. Okay, so if I bring the main piece back in, and also a bit of PVA, all we'll need to do is apply a thin line of glue to the 2 edges that you can see in the diagram in the corner, and then stick this little piece into place so that it kind of sits on top of one of the flat edges of the smaller assembly, and at the same time is equally spaced between the 2 triangular panels that are part of the pattern of the larger assembly. If all of that didn't make much sense, then basically it's just something like you can see here. So I'll go ahead and speed this next part up while I do the exact same thing another 5 times, and hopefully you can see the kind of thing that I'm trying to achieve with these. Anyway, when we're done, this is how it should look. This is the kind of thing that we're aiming for. Now, if you just want to make one of these kind of turbine things, then you can do the exact same thing again on the other side. But you can also make a whole row of them if you like, and to do this we'll need to stick this kind of blank texture to another piece of corrugated card, and you guessed it, we'll then cut that to size. And all we're going to do with this is apply some glue to the back, and then stick that onto the flat side so that the edge of this semicircle lines up with the inside edge of the red semicircle of the printout. So we have that on one side and all of the details on the other. Right then, next we'll take this texture and glue that around an empty toilet roll tube in the orientation that you can see here, so that when we cut it out we end up with 3 textured strips that take advantage of the curve of the tube. And the idea here is that if I bring in the piece that we just made, we can glue one of these to that extra semicircular piece that we've just glued to the one side. And if we take another piece that has that kind of blank on both sides, we can slot that in there. Then we'll just need to make another piece that's the same as the first, and do the same thing again on the other side. So there you go, something like that. And as you can see, you can make these however long you like, just by adding in more and more sections. But in this example, I'm just going to use the two end pieces and one of the middle sections, like you can see here. So I'll just add some hot glue to the edge of that little extra piece, and glue the tube into place. And if you like, you can also add a bit more glue to the inside, if you want to make sure that you get a really good bond. In either case, this is how it should look. Then it's just a simple matter of gluing on the other side in the exact same way. So there you go, there's our little generator. But like I say, it doesn't have to be that little, you can make these however big you want. Anyway, if we want to make a base for the whole thing, we can take this texture and stick that to some foam core, and then cut it to a suitable size. In this example, I've gone with a 4-inch square, as that's about the right size for the piece that I just made. In addition to that, we can also cut out several strips of the hazard pattern that's the same width as the thickness of the foam core, and glue those around all of the edges just to finish the whole thing off. Then it's up to you. You could glue the generator on top, or just rest it in place. You know, whichever you prefer. And I think that's pretty much it for this one, so here's a picture of it in action with some of the other bits and pieces from the sci-fi range, and on the whole, I think it works quite well. And while the sci-fi range isn't quite as popular as the dungeon stuff, it would still be good to know if you plan on making these, and what games you might be using them for. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to leave me a comment below, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.